participate in the COVID vaccine trials. Those who qualify will schedule an appointment to come to one of our 2 clinic facilities in the greater Houston area. At the Texas Center for Drug Development, we're here to make your experience as safe and efficient as possible. The experience is much like a visit to your general practitioner. We ask you wear a mask upon arrival and as you enter our lobby. The receptionist will greet you as you check in, take your temperature, and prepare for your appointment. We ask you practice social distancing while you wait, and you may be asked to wait in your car should there be others in the waiting area. When we're ready to see you, you'll be greeted by one of our study coordinators who will take you to the clinic area where some of your vitals will be checked before proceeding with the appointment, like your height and blood pressure. The coordinator will also discuss any past medical history, provide general information to you on the study, and discuss consent with you. Next, you'll be ready to see one of our doctors overseeing the trial, where they'll discuss any additional questions you may have about participating in the trial and conduct a full physical exam. They'll also discuss the follow-up routine, like keeping an electronic diary and access to study coordinators for any questions or concerns. Our clinic follows a strict sterilization process before the vaccine is administered through your arm. While investigational, the vaccines have been approved by the FDA for phase 2 or 3 trials, which means that they have gone through earlier rounds of human trials where the safety data is available. After the vaccine is administered, participants will be carefully monitored by our doctors and staff for at least 30 minutes to ensure their safe departure. By participating in this study, you could help end this current pandemic and prevent future occurrences. This is your opportunity to contribute to the process of helping us see life in Houston return to normal again. Join the fight at HoustonFightsCovid.com.
What's going on, Majic family? KG Smooth. We are here today to talk about the vaccine. You've heard the spots running on Majic 102, Houston Fights COVID, and I'm going to tell you about it. This is a movement to bring together Houstonians from all walks of life to join the cause to aid the development of vaccines to turn the tide against COVID, because as you know, it is it's running rampant in our communities. And so this initiative was done by sister organizations DM Clinical Research and the Texas Center for Drug Development. And together, they have comprised the largest independent clinical research group in the city. All right. And so through their partnership with prominent global pharmaceutical partners, they bring the community the opportunity to participate in this cutting edge research under the careful medical supervision of local physicians right here in Houston. So the clinics are proud of their Houston roots, and with over a decade and a half of serving the community and their leadership in the industry. And earlier this year, they were nominated by the World Vaccine Congress for the Best Clinical Trial Site Award. So congratulations to them on that. And over the years, you know, the team, they have had the support of thousands of Houstonians who have participated and have played a key part in vaccine trials to help protect Americans against threats from things like Ebola, anthrax, pneumonia, and even the flu. And so the fight against COVID is certainly one of the most important of our time. And Houstonians, they have stepped up to the cause in record numbers. About 1,400 people have already received the study vaccine, but we still got a long way to go, and we need your help. That's why we are here today. So we want to welcome Dr. Frederick Santiago and Dr. Lisa Holloway. Dr. Santiago, Dr. Holloway, how y'all doing?
Good afternoon. Fine. Hi, KG. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, well, it's the pleasure is all mine. I'm glad that we are having this conversation because, you know, I saw on Twitter months ago, this had to be probably in like May or June. And a gentleman was like, COVID vaccine trials, in Houston, you're up first. And so I just saw the tweet. I didn't think anything of it. We go on throughout the summer. Then we started hearing, little spots running like, "Hey, are you interested in, trying for the vaccine trial for COVID-19, on Majic?" And then here we are today with that. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, that tweet that I saw, he was right, because here we are with doing the trial. So first, can you explain, like, let's just take it from the top, like, how exactly do vaccines work, and what is the process of doing a clinical trial?
Well, I guess I'll take that question first. Well, vaccines work by different mechanisms. It depends upon the organism that you're targeting against. Some of them that we inject in the body actually is a dead or inactivated virus, and your immune system reacts to it. Or in some cases, we might inject parts of proteins that mimic the virus so that your immune system can react to it. What we're doing here recently is testing the ability for our body to produce on its own, using natural mechanisms, a clone of the virus that looks like the virus and mimics the virus, and so that your immune system would react against it. So what we're doing with the Moderna trial, certainly the Pfizer trial, is somewhat different. It's very novel, and it provides a lot of advantages. One is obviously you're not getting a live virus. The other one is the ability to ramp up manufacturing at a record pace because of the platforms that are used to produce such novel vaccines. So, and that's one of the reasons why, we can say that we can move a lot quicker getting this out to the public, not because we're, skirting safety, but only because the manufacturing capabilities have improved, and also because government red tape has been reduced. So, so in short, that's how the vaccines work and how we're ramping up.
Mm-hmm. I definitely want to emphasize that these vaccines are safe. We've actually gone through different phases to ensure safety and that there's no risk to participants. I think the other thing too, that yes, we are trying our best to get through this as fast as possible so we can have a vaccine available to everyone. Also too, I think with these trials, they have also tried to focus on communities that are underrepresented and also are affected more from COVID infection.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Did you want to interject, Dr. Sanchez?
Oh, no, that just agreeing.
Okay. Yeah. So, so with the vaccine trials, will one vaccine be approved, or will there be multiples?
Well, I think it's possible that there will be multiple vaccines approved. Right now, there's an effort where tax dollars are being poured into major pharmaceutical companies to be prepared to manufacture large volumes and large amount of doses if whichever one or more becomes approved. There are a number of vaccines out there, and also some things you may have heard of recently, like antibody cocktails and things like that, that may in fact be complementary. So I would expect that there would probably be multiple vaccines approved. And, a lot of it has to do with, the mechanism of action, how they work in certain populations, where the safety quotient is in certain populations. And that's why we're here today, because it's very important that the African American community, Hispanic community, and minority communities participate. And the reason is that we would have no idea whether or not these vaccines that are going to be produced actually work in certain populations, or whether or not they're safe in certain populations. We've known from the past that there are a lot of differences in the way different communities react to medications. So right now, we're very interested in having more African Americans recruited into these trials. And that's why we're here today to hopefully answer any questions that may dissuade them from participating.
Indeed. So we keep hearing this term, fast track, fast track of a vaccine. Like, what does that mean exactly? Because I mean, it sounds like something that's being rushed through the process, and a lot of people, take it that way. So what exactly, when they say, fast track of a vaccine, what does that mean exactly?
Well, as far as fast track, it has more to do with the bureaucracy or red tape that sometimes can hold back studies. And so with the goal of, I think the overall goal of getting 30,000 participants, and then each participating research clinic trying to reach that goal, it helps, because of course we know COVID it's tragic. It has devastated. We have over 215,000 people that have died, and so that is more of why we're fast tracking, and that is not to interfere with any safety guards. I know that others that we have heard lately that there have been two research entities that have held their trials. And again, that is the process working, because definitely if there is cause to pause and look and make sure that this is a safe vaccine, then it's good that we see that process going. So fast track at no means mean that we're cutting safety.
Right. And just to add, build on that too, we're able to talk about fast track for the very reason is that over the last 5 or 10 years, that there have been leaps and bounds made in the manufacturing process, leaps and bounds made in how quickly we can map the surface of viruses. It's gotten to the point where, for instance, with the COVID virus, when it first came out, we understood what was on its surface in a matter of a couple of weeks. That had to do with a lot of the advances made in the science of gene technology and things like that. So when you put together how fast we can map it, how fast we can produce it, which in many instances is just a month or less, and then combine that with the public effort to put all the major pharmaceutical companies on standby and get them to prepare to ramp up manufacturing quickly if one or more becomes positive. And they've actually been, through this Operation Warp Speed stuff, they've actually been paid in advance to prepare their manufacturing sites to ramp up production. And that also includes people getting paid in advance, companies getting paid in advance to make sure there are enough syringes, to make sure there's enough vials, et cetera. So all the things that traditionally were done in a longitudinal fashion are being done simultaneously. And that reflects the urgency related to the COVID virus. So this is why it appears, it may appear to you, to the average person that, hey, you know what, we're going too fast, we're, skirting safety. But in fact, why we can sit here and talk about fast track is because of all of these different components and players in the industries preparing to react immediately when a substance or a product is approved.
Mm-hmm. Could you just bring a little comfort to the audience here, just as we were talking about, fast track, and even though it is not what other people think, they're not rushing it through, but some people keep hearing about the process and how soon that we will have one, and it has caused a little pause for some folks, because they're like, well, hey, the polio vaccine, like that was the fastest one that they developed, and that took 4 years to happen. And so, now, of course, with, technology being the way that it is, and of course, us having brilliant scientists and epidemiologists and physicians like you two. Can you just bring a little comfort to let people know that you all are still going through the same processes, just because of technology that things are now being sped up a little faster?
Go ahead, Dr. Helen, if you can.
Well, I definitely want to reassure our communities that that's why Dr. Santiago and myself are here and are participating, because we are your eyes and ears to what's going on. And as I said, that in no way are we going to sacrifice safety. Particularly to those here in Houston. We are part of the community. And I know we have been in medicine, I think the both of us, way over 20 years. And so when you're involved with the community and keeping people healthy, definitely we are committed to safety.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, no one can erase the past events and tragedies associated with trials, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, if anything came out of that, it's what's happening today. And that is, there is a plethora of oversight, a plethora of ethical bodies, individual institutional review boards. Everyone else looking over your shoulder with regard to the rights of subjects, the ethics of the process, et cetera. So out of these tragedies from the past came really good regulatory efforts and programs. And so this is, and I think the other piece that I would add to that is, compared to 50 or 40 years ago when these kinds of things were happening, there was not the type of minority representation at every level of the process. From decisions about what to make, to making the drugs, to testing the drugs, to doing the audits, to administering the drugs clinically in sites like ours. Right now, you have minority representation at every level, in big pharma, all the way to the community organizations like this. So, and so the dynamics have changed considerably to allow us to sit here and say that the kinds of things that happened in the past would be very, very, very tricky to try to pull off again today.
Mm-hmm. And just to add with that, Dr. Santiago, I know that a lot of people have thought about what has happened in the past in regard to the Tuskegee syphilis study, the Henrietta Lacks. And so for such a time as this, that we as a community can now not forget what happened in the past, but that we can strive for betterment, that we know that this will never happen again. It will never happen on our watch.
Got that right.
To the fans,
we can guarantee you that.
We are talking with Dr. Frederick Santiago, who is with us from DM Clinical Research. And he's one of the doctors who is working on the COVID vaccine trials. He's been practicing medicine for 36 years. And this lovely young lady down at the bottom is Dr. Lisa Hollowell. She is a research doctor on the COVID vaccine trials at the Texas Center for Drug Development. And she has been practicing medicine for 25 years. And we are just giving you the information that you need, because we need your participation for the COVID vaccine trial. So are you injecting people with the actual virus in your studies, docs?
No.
Oh, definitely no.
No. In fact, what's happening is we're using the body's natural way of producing immunity to produce what looks like the virus to the body, so that the body can produce the immunity against it. So, and this is one of the novel things about the particular investigational product we're involved in. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So let's say I'm selected for the study. KG Smooth has signed up and he's approved. When will I know which study and drug company is sponsoring it?
So usually, okay, well, usually when you come in and you're approved for the study, the consents that we go through are very detailed. And so it will be at that time that the full study is disclosed to you, what's involved, what possible side effects, and what you can expect when you come for your visit.
Right. Now, the only thing that any of us would not, only thing you won't know is what you got, whether you got a saline injection or whether you got the actual product. We won't know, you won't know, and that's and how that process is randomized to who gets what is computerized. And so there's no human interdiction in terms of who gets what. And so, and that's disclosed to you as well in the informed consent documents. And that's one of the things that came out of the Tuskegee issue, because they did not have what we would consider to be today the type of informed consent documentation that would pass muster. And so, so today, you know, these documents are very carefully constructed, very carefully delivered, and every effort is made to ensure that you actually understand what you read.
Typically, how long does a vaccine trial last? Like in the individual, if I was to go, you know, like how long of a process is that?
Well, I'll interject here, and Dr. Holloway, you can build on this. First of all, there are several phases to trials, and they last different lengths. Phase one is the trial that happens when, you know, it's first given to a human. That usually lasts a month or two, and the purpose of it is to find out whether a human can take it, as guided by certain animal models, and what dose they can take. How high can you go and still achieve what we consider to be the proper response of the immune system. That usually lasts a month or two. Then you go in, and that usually involves less than, you know, maybe 20 to 80 people, maybe less than 100 people. The second phase involves hundreds of people, and it builds on the information that we learned in the first phase. In other words, okay, is it still true that humans can take this dose that we figured out in phase one, and are we seeing similar side effects, or are we seeing something different? And that can last 6 to 12 months, sometimes 3 to tip in the past traditionally, somewhere in the 6 to 12 month range. Now the phase 3, which is what we're doing, involves thousands of people, and it builds upon what we've learned in phase 2, which is, okay, when we give it to all types of people across genders, across races and whatnot, is it still predictable? In other words, in terms of whether the safety profile is the same, whether the you know, response of the immune system is still similar, or are we seeing something else? So when you involve thousands of people, that can last a couple years. Typically, it does last at least 2 years, and the reason for that is to make certain that at 2 years there's still immunity, or whether or not, or you know, also to try to determine whether or not, in fact, a booster is required, et cetera. So it can go out that long. As I said, though, as we mentioned, you know, with today's technology, we're able to get through a lot of that quicker because, you know, it doesn't take quite as long to, you know, to produce the virus and whatnot, to produce the vaccine. So that's hopefully that part of that explains the question, or at least partially.
Absolutely. I'm dipping over here to the comments, and I see one person asked, why do they need Black people for the study?
Well, you know, again, there's been like 215,000 people that have died in the U.S. And from some data, we're understanding that African Americans are infected almost 3 times as white Americans, and then we're twice as likely to die. So that's part of the reason that definitely we need to be involved. For some reasons, and it may be because of comorbid conditions, chronic medical conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, which, our community is overwhelmed with, can make us more vulnerable. So yes, definitely, because we want these vaccines, we want to be able to know if they're effective. So that's why I would encourage our community to please participate.
Yeah, and you could imagine, everybody has to participate.
Mm-hmm.
Our Caucasian brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, Indians, anyone who's living in this community should participate. Why is that? Can you imagine if we didn't know whether it worked in Asians and give it to everyone else?
Mm-hmm.
How would it just doesn't make science sense or ethical sense
Mm-hmm.
not to involve everyone. And this is one of the reasons why there's some reimbursement for it, because we understand there's challenges and costs associated with being involved, and we don't want to attract only people who can afford it, because right away you bias the information, you bias the data toward people who can afford it versus understanding how it reacts in other socioeconomic groups. So this is bigger than just, this is this all hands on deck here. We can't leave out one community and expect everybody to benefit, because it won't happen.
Doesn't happen that way. And then please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a medical expert like you two are. Things affect people with melanin differently than people without, correct?
Correct, because as I believe Dr. Santiago had mentioned before, that there are some medications, for instance, for high blood pressure, hypertension. We know that there are certain classes of blood pressure medications that work with African Americans better. And so, again, we need to be in the process of how all of these things are determined, so that we can have effective treatments. So definitely, I think it's important.
Okay, they are really going in over here on the comments. Have we discussed the counter effects of the vaccine? Asked Kenneth Williams.
What is the question again?
Have we discussed the counter effects of the vaccine? No, Kenneth, we haven't discussed the counter effects,
Okay.
but if they know about them, I'm sure that they can share.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
go ahead, Dr.
Santiago. We'll just trade from here on out, okay? But that's the purpose of the trial, to find out what it does and how people of different genders and races react to it. And that's why. So your question is very important. But you can imagine we've never been able to answer it in the future if you didn't participate. Mm-hmm. So, so right now, that's what we're trying to find out.
Okay. Judy wants to know what age groups are needed.
Okay. So 18 and above. So those that are, over 65, young at heart. We need you all. And actually, you can even have medical conditions such as heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, emphysema. As long as they're controlled, you can be considered to be screened and be a part of the study.
Okay.
Right, and and age is a big deal with this study. We're concentrating on high risk groups who we've identified are over 65 years of age, and with as Dr. Holloway mentioned, with other chronic diseases. We're interested in less than 65 with chronic diseases and less than 65 with no risks.
Mhm.
So that way we get to understand how the product might react across all possibilities and all experiences.
Mhm.
The People Station would like to know, how can I join the trial study?
Well, you go to HoustonFightsCovid.com and sign up, and be patient, because we will be in touch with you. And particularly if you identify yourself as an African American, you will probably be called very quickly.
Okay.
Mhm.
And what is the financial compensation for this?
So it can actually, because we do value your time, and travel expense, and so it can be around 1,000. Now, mind you, it's different for each study, but it could be around 1,000, and we're talking over that 2-year period.
Now, if one has an underlying condition, let's say something like high blood pressure, or maybe sickle cell, or maybe HIV or something, can they participate in the trial?
Yes.
Yes, they can. Different studies have criteria and protocols, and so we encourage everyone to call and be screened. Yes.
Okay.
And, there's always a secondary benefit too. You come in and you actually get a physical exam from physicians, and we sometimes identify things you didn't even know you had.
Mhm.
And so it's the other benefit to it, is that you'll access the medical community, this way, instead of trying to access it in traditional ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, again, so y'all go ahead and log on, because they need us. Sign up at HoustonFightsCovid.com. That is HoustonFightsCovid.com. And I'm trying to think of the Majic family on Facebook. They've asked all the questions that I already had in my head that wasn't even on the sheet. What is it that people need to know?
Well, the other thing I wanted to mention, I know when I believe someone that mentioned, as far as maybe side effects or counter effects, that as far as we see, they're just like any other vaccine, that you can have swelling and tenderness at the injection site, low-grade fever, and muscle aches. So those are the expected things that we see.
And so far,
consent.
and so far so good. There's been no surprises
Right.
in terms of what the animal models predicted, what we saw in phase 1, what we saw in phase 2. We're seeing that this is something that is fairly well tolerated, and the side effects we've seen usually are, like Dr. Holloway suggested, or maybe a little fluey or muscle aches, and they usually are gone within 24 to 48 hours, and if they occur. So we're pleased so far that this particular product is tolerable.
Okay. We have another question. What is the difference between influenza, aka the flu, and COVID-19?
Okay, so influenza and COVID-19, I mean, mind you, they're both viruses, but they're definitely different. They may have similar symptoms, but what we're finding with COVID-19, since it's a new virus, is that it can be quite virulent, meaning that it can make you very sick in a short period of time. And so the other thing too is that with influenza, every year there are people who actually die from influenza. I think that we're probably more familiar with it. And then of course we have, prevention by getting, your flu shot each year, and then also treatments. Whereas with COVID, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We're working on it. I'm sure that you've heard some of the things that are used, but they're mostly for those who are hospitalized. Nothing that could be given to someone outpatient or in the clinic. Mm-hmm. So again, they're similar with symptoms, but definitely different.
But COVID is more respiratory, yes?
True, but you also could have, stomach issues, diarrhea. I know initially when COVID came out, it was mostly respiratory that we saw, but then, we kind of had to add symptoms. Even loss of taste and smell. So again, it's new, and we're finding more and more things about COVID each day.
Indeed.
Right, and that's symptom of loss of taste and smell is fairly unique to the COVID virus versus influenza. Also, the COVID virus has some type of peculiar predilection to jump body systems. It can cause kidney failure. It can cause strokes. It can cause heart inflammation. And who and when somebody's going to get that is extremely unpredictable and variable. We've not seen that kind of thing with flu so much. There's something about this organism that is hijacking ourselves and causing a lot of trouble. So we really, it's usually, unless you have a complication of bacterial pneumonia following the flu, usually when you're getting better. With this one, you'll start getting better, and then all of a sudden you need a vent. And so it's totally unpredictable. And so we've got a lot to learn about this thing.
Yes, and I think this is another thing I would like to encourage our community, that of all seasons to please go out and get your flu shot. We know we've seen some cases where people have been reinfected with COVID, but I can't even imagine having COVID and the flu. So I definitely would encourage people to get their flu shot this year.
Yikes. Here's a great question from Christian Rios. He said, how can those who are ineligible to participate contribute to the success of the vaccine?
I'm not so sure what he means by ineligible, because there are a number of protocols that are coming forward that we have where they're extremely liberal in terms of what you can have. So I think before he considers himself ineligible, he might want to dial in the HoustonFightsCovid.com and have to screen him and see if he fits with one COVID trial where another one he may not.
Also, too, I would ask Christian to encourage family members, encourage neighbors, get the word out. And with that, you're doing your part to participate.
Indeed.
And if nothing else, wear your mask.
Wear the mask, please.
Even if you don't believe that you're in a high risk group from getting sick, wear your mask to save the economy.
Indeed. Here's a great question from the lovely Pam McKay. She said, I saw a report this morning that the virus will not be recommended for children. What will be the plan for protecting children going forward?
Well, in fact, there have been recent announcements of some of the pharmaceutical companies extending the clinical trials to children above the age of 12, like from 12 and up. And so that, I think with time we're going to see, and I guess it really depends upon what ultimately we figure out is their level of risk, et cetera, either to getting sick or passing it on to other people. So that question has to be answered in terms of how and when that might happen. But I don't. And Dr. Holloway, you can comment on this. I think that whole group would need to be considered at some point along this journey.
Yes, definitely. Most of the trials are for adults because, we make the cutoff at 18. But what I would say as far as children are concerned is continue being vigilant with washing hands, wearing masks, limiting, outside activities such as going to indoor type things. We know from some of what we've studied that children seem to be less affected, but however, they do carry a lot of the virus with them. They might have mild symptoms, but on the flip side, there are children that we have seen that have died that have had underlying conditions. There have been some children that, in a rare form, it's called multi-system inflammatory syndrome, where they develop rashes, they develop heart problems. So definitely, I think, there is going to be the need to develop something for children. But, right now, do what you can do. And wearing masks and washing hands and just keeping social distancing.
And I'm reminded that in fact, TCDD and DM will be investigations to children, and that one of the trials that we have, Pfizer, already allows older children. So they should connect with us and see whether or not they actually qualify.
Indeed. Speaking of children, go ahead and finish.
Oh, and I was just thinking also with regard to what the gentleman said about what he can do if he wasn't eligible. He can refer people to us who he thinks is eligible, and if I'm not mistaken, he can get reimbursed for a small sum of money, $50 or something like that, for any referral that gets in. So he can help recruit and also get paid for it.
And also get paid for it. So you heard that, Christian? You can be a little bird dog and get paid since you think that you're not eligible. But go ahead and go to the website and go through the questionnaire to see you might be eligible, my guy. Speaking of children and the vaccine, the president is now back out and about, and after 5 days, just miraculously, just healthy. The best I've ever felt in my life. I'm telling you, COVID. What COVID? What did he have? People want to know. And will that be available for everyone else so they can feel so good so quick?
Well, he was given one of the medications that we generally use in an HIV scenario, which is commonly being used now. He was also given Decadron, which is a steroid, a potent anti-inflammatory, and he was also given an infusion under a compassionate use scenario that has antibodies in it that attacks a certain region on the virus's arm that attaches to your cells. And in fact, it's one of the ones that I'm most excited about because the way it's done, it prevents mutants, viruses from changing their body. It prevents that virus from changing its body so quickly. So it makes it have to change it in 2 areas versus one, which makes that particular cocktail, in my mind, particularly interesting. Now, Decadron will make anybody feel good for 3 to 4 days. The thing that concerns me the most is he was sick. He just didn't have a runny nose. I mean, his oxygen saturations were falling, and if they not intervened at him,
I saw him wheezing as he was trying to go up those steps, and took the mask off. He
may have been on the vent today. Now, here's my other problem I'm worried about is that once this anti-inflammatory process wears off, you're stuck with a immune suppressant effect. And I'm not sure, but the other day he was getting hoarse. And I said, uh-oh, so I don't know what's going to happen. He's not out of the woods. And so it's possible that, he can still end up with some type of bronchial something, and here we go again. So what he got is not a cure, it's treatments. He went to Walter Reed, and, a lot of us, until such time. Yeah, right.
That's what I was telling him. He's the president of the United States. He's going to get the best.
They would have done that for any president, because the president is unique. You just can't treat the president any particular way.
Yeah.
Right. Here is a great question. What is your feedback on the information that came out yesterday about people with O-type blood? Are you familiar with that?
You want to take that? Or you want me to take it?
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I've not heard of the as far as blood type being a factor.
Yeah. And well, that's actually new, and they're right on top of it. They're pulling this stuff. They pulling it out on us, Dr. Holloway. But that's a great question. There's reports out there that say, if you have O-type blood, you may be in a better position from the standpoint of just getting sick or survivability. And some people think that type A or something like that might be the worst. But we don't know. We need to take a closer look at all of that, because upwards of 47% of African Americans have O-type, but yet we're dying. So I don't think O-type blood is going to be the only factor. I think there's going to be other factors associated with it, and that's why they do studies and do regression analysis and all these things to figure out what part of who you are actually contributed to your problem. So, slower socioeconomics, associated diabetes, associated asthma, O plus 1, 2, 3, 4, they remove the ability of O to help you. So if it helps at all. So we'll see.
Yeah, I concur.
Wow, that was a great question. Thank you, Pam. So I remember reading back in March, late March, maybe early April, when COVID first hit. And this was an article out of the Zimbabwe Observer, because I like to read other publications that aren't American, because, sometimes there's a lot of propaganda. And so in this article in the Zimbabwe Observer, it talked about an African man who was in China, who the doctors were flabbergasted by, that he had the virus, but he had no symptoms, was down. They monitored him for one day and it was nothing. The next day they let him go. It was just like he was just as healthy. And then the study came back that melanated skin was, could keep people from having the virus. And then that was going around for a while. And then boom, when it hit the US, who does it hit the hardest? Us. Were you all privy to any of that information back then? And also, are there different versions of the COVID out? Because we just noticed, like, throughout its duration, how it has progressed, and some of the things that were said at first, didn't work, and then some things that that they told us that didn't work now do work, things like, it doesn't live in the heat, or, at first it lives on hard surfaces, but now, it doesn't live on hard surfaces. So were you all privy to that information? And is there anything that we should know that's new about this that we don't, because it seems to change?
Dr. Holloway, you want to take that?
So that's the thing with COVID, that, when it initially came out, now mind you, this started back in, December 2019 in Wuhan, China. So with the first reports, we heard that, children were affected, young people, basically had mild symptoms. But then by the time it got over to the US, things changed. There was concern of mutations of the virus. And so with it being new, again, we are learning, we're forever learning more about the virus. So, that definitely, is a factor. Also, too, everyone has different, responses in regard to their immune system. And so it may, treat the virus differently. Again, do we understand that totally? No. And so I just think it's something that we still are learning, and we'll just find out more as we look more.
Okay.
Right, and this is the process. It's funny because, we're in the age of a 24-hour news cycle and social media and internet, and a lot of times reports about what's happening or not happening get ahead of medical science to actually react to it. And this is the problem that we have with misinformation, counter-information, that coupled with the fact that medicine is not an exact science. It's a process. We go through iteration after iteration. Once we learn something on Saturday that needs to be modified based on something we said a month ago, that's not unique to us. We don't panic about that because that's what it is. I mean, this thing is a dynamic situation. It's not static. So everything you hear in the news and everything people say may or may not be true, but because someone makes a suggestion that you do A versus B does not necessarily mean that they can't make their mind up. It means that, hey, guess what? This is what we've learned, and it would be counterproductive and unethical to tell you that, all right, now we got to change courses and go in another direction.
Right.
Okay, and it won't be the first or the last time this happens. So don't get upset about the changes and the changes. But make sure that you don't immediately grab onto the story that satisfies your belief systems.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because the media has been doing a lot of that lately, especially with this term that we keep hearing, herd immunity. So since Black people, since the Black population seems to be more susceptible to the virus, should we be extremely worried about this idea of herd immunity?
Well, it depends on the context you're talking about. Like, the whole point of the vaccine is to create herd immunity. All right. If you're suggesting that, okay, let's just let everybody get sick and whatever comes down, that's inappropriate. It's inappropriate in my mind from an ethical sense, but this also doesn't make sense from an economics point of view. I mean, one of the reasons why things are getting shut down is because, people are coming up with virus at work, and then you have to shut that down for 2 weeks. So if you're trying to save the economy, put on your mask. All right? It's herd immunity will only aggravate the economics and very likely the clinical parts of it as well.
Yeah. And I think even if we look outside of the coronavirus, I mean, for instance, there's measles, polio, other things that, people have relied on herd immunity, but it does not give the protection. It's the vaccine that gives the protection. And so I think that if you want to be protected, you need to be vaccinated.
Indeed.
And remember that it won't keep you from getting the disease, because COVID's with us. It'll keep you from getting sick or dying from the disease. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Correct.
And that's what the vaccine whole process is about.
So Christian is asking, what is Houston doing differently compared to other places in the U.S. Doing clinical trials?
Well, I'm not so sure that. I'm not familiar with a lot of parts of the country in terms of whether or not they have large community-based research groups. I think Houston is a bit different because we have a partnership between, you know, what we're doing in a community-based situation versus the academic situation. And I think that that's one of the differences that I've seen as I've moved around the country. You know, so, I mean, in California, where I used to live, they had a similar type of feel, but in a lot of other places I've lived, they weren't existent. It was pretty strictly confined to academic centers and things. So, so I think if we're doing anything different, it's this community-public partnership in my mind.
Indeed. What about here recently? We heard in the news about this second trial that was halted recently with Johnson and Johnson. What about that?
So, you know, first we heard of AstraZeneca, you know, in the UK, and now, you know, Johnson and Johnson, Eli Lilly, and actually, I think it proves the point that the process is working, that those safety checks and balances are being played out. I know that, you know, because everyone is now, you know, kind of looking at it, this type of things have happened in the past with, you know, new products that have come on the market or vaccines. And so it actually makes me feel more reassured that, you know, for safety concerns, they're halting the process and trying to figure out what is going on.
Okay. Is the virus airborne? Judy wants to know.
Yes. But also you can't forget your hands that are involved in the process as well. But yes, it's airborne, and it's one of the more contagious viruses we've seen in recent history.
I know the CDC has made some updates that, you know, it's even considered aerosolized, so that, you know, you could be, let's say, talking, speaking, shouting in one area, and you leave that area, that some of those virus particles are left behind. So, you know, thus it kind of, you know, it shows that even if you're outside and you're close together and not wearing a mask, that you can definitely be, put yourself in danger of contracting COVID.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain to some young folks. I was just like, yo, like, when y'all together like this, like, you got to wear the mask. I was like, before this happened, when we would be around each other talking, how many times did you see spit flying out the person's mouth? And maybe sometimes it even got on you. And then they like, oh, my bad. Like, just talking just in conversation. So think about that and how your masks keeps that from flying everywhere and getting on other people. I mean, it really is to protect other people. We see here that the Texas Center for Drug Development is saying there are several vaccine candidates coming online over the next months. If you sign up, you will be evaluated for future programs. You can also do your part by spreading the word and join our Vaccine Ambassador program from our website to help reach others in the community and get rewarded for your efforts. So I'm telling y'all can be a bird dog. You know, you don't want to do it, maybe you can recruit some folks and, you know, get some money. They get the $1,000 for doing it. You may get a little little gas money for helping that become. So, wow, this has been so informative, Dr. Santiago and Dr. Holloway. And so Houston family, like, we need you. They're called clinical trials for a reason. And, you know, if you trust it, go ahead and sign up, get on the website, HoustonFightsCovid.com. And because these clinical trials are going on right now, and just for, you know, security purposes, for that warm and fuzzy hug, so I can feel safe, like, you know, with the distrust of vaccines, especially in the Black community. You know, these drug trials, they got a, you know, historic way of not treating us so well, i.e., as you mentioned earlier, Dr. Holloway, the Tuskegee experiment. So, just let the folks know that they can trust this process.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, don't let the past paralyze you from benefiting from the future.
Indeed.
Yes.
Well, well, listen, I mean, wow. First, thank you for your time. I mean, we've been on here for a good hour talking about this, and I know that you all have got a busy clinic to run. So first, we really appreciate you taking the time to explain about COVID-19 itself, but especially the vaccines, these clinical trials that are going on right now. Majic Family, HoustonFightsCovid.com. Go there. Dr. Frederick Santiago and the lovely Dr. Lisa Hollowell. Any last words?
Oh, just, sign up and let's be in this fight together.
Indeed. And then y'all can see.
We're here looking out for you.
The website
We're here watching for you.
Yes.
Say that one more time.
We're here for them.
Yes.
We're your eyes and ears.
They are your eyes and ears. And this was amazing. So thank you all so much. Majic Family, thank you. I hope you all enjoyed this informative hour as we talk to Dr. Santiago and Dr. Hollowell. And thank you to Houston Fights COVID. And thank you to DM Clinical Research and the Texas Center for Drug Development, them getting together to make this happen for us. And listen, I like what y'all can't see what Dr. Santiago's screen says behind you totally, but I believe it's, what does it say, Doc? Something about vaccines. Only a vaccine can end the pandemic. And so this is why we need your help with these trials. So, And until then.
Yes. Mask up.
Mask up. Until then, mask up. Dr. Frederick Santiago and Dr. Lisa Hollowell, thank you all so much.